Well, hey there, world. I'm Luna the Turtle. I'm making this video to showcase my Foundry module that I've created called Bagoless. Um, it was made originally for me and my table. We were running Bloodlords for Pathfinder 2e's Adventure Path, and I needed a way to represent the factions for my players. I started creating this with the intent of being able to display that and have something that was live tracking with them. But after I had kind of gotten the base done, I realized that it was something that could be so much more and that it could be used by so many more people. So I actually took the dive into creating and making this module to release out into the world. Um, I am hoping to maintain and keep this project up. I have created a Ko-fi, which I've never done, in the hopes that maybe some people would reach out and be able to make donations to help with what genuinely what will be student loans and not coffee. But this is me showcasing my module. You can see that there's a new button on the UI that's been added for bagoless. You have this new bag. You always have to have one bag. I can't remember what the default is that I had set in, but when you rename it, you can make it whatever you want. We're going to start off with this one called Factions, and we're going to start adding a couple items into that list. First, we'll have the Wizards of Westwood, the Witches of Wildwood, the Constructium, and the Bookworms, which was my favorite because it has a pun. I made all of these up as just a way of representing and showing. Let's put in some images for them. I have these under my testing world where I've been working on this. And for the wizards, obviously, the robe. For the witches, the witchcraft. For the Constructium, a golem. And the bookworms, which are just dragons that like their books. I did add in new functionality. This is part of the reason that I'm doing this big, large showcase, which is the allotment of backgrounds that you can put on for any image, but it really showcases well for when you have something like a PNG. And then also this, the ability to now reposition and set basically the item that you have, your image, the way that you want it. Um, we have player two here. That's the one I'm going to be using for representing all of this. All of these factions, I want the player to know about them. So I'm going to set them to persist at 0. That means that even though the value is 0, they'll be able to see it. Now, they won't see it yet, and that's because I haven't added a value. You have to add a value at least once for the player to start tracking it. At this point, I'll just plug in some temporary values. We'll say that the Witches of Wildwood obviously do not like this player because they're in such good standing with the Wizards of Westwood. The Constructium, they have actually done a lot with. They happen to be a crafter, and they like the bookworms. They do a lot of research. This is kind of the character that we have here. Now, for that player, they're going to have that represented on their UI. Let me take you over so that you can see it. They're going to have the same type of opening it up with a bag of lists little tracker in the scene controls UI. Now, they have access to the same thing. So if they dislike the color that you pick, they could choose their own. They also have the ability to reposition it so that if they want it slightly different, they could do so. You can see the values that the player has for those factions all placed in. And this is kind of the whole gist of it. They are able to resize the UI as needed. So if they wanted to set it like this, they could. I am looking at in the future possibly making it so that these tiles can be represented in a smaller fashion. But for now, it can be opened and closed as needed. And that also might be a bit more complicated. So we'll see about that implementation. Now, let me take you back over to the GM view. Let me hop back on over myself. So we've got these 4 factions now. Let's jump on to the next part of it. I would like to make a new bag. This bag is going to be something that we would do at many of our tables and is commonly done. And I would probably not track regular ammo, though you might do that. But I would use this absolutely to track unique or specialty ammunition. So we'll put in, for instance, that we have some arrows, we have some bombs, and poison. And we'll put in some images for these because again, we want to show off the cool abilities of this. Now this is a great example of a PNG that just doesn't show up very well. All of them are sized to fit for the container, so you might want to zoom out a little bit. And then of course the background so that you can actually see it. So I can throw on this background and it'll make it much easier to see that item. Same for bombs. We can pop them in as well. And we'll zoom it out just a touch and we'll give it that nice red fire color for the explosion. And then poison, the last item. And we'll zoom that out a touch and we'll give it a nice good green color for it. Now, these two items, I want them to be player controlled and persist at 0. These are items that are made by the player, something that they craft, maybe daily or otherwise. And they have a quiver full of arrows, 20. They have, a bag that has some bombs in it. And then they have this more unique item that they'd found. And they only have a limited number of uses, so this won't persist at 0. But I will let the player control it so that they can track it. Awesome. Now we've got all of that in. Now, I do want to add in one other thing to this. We have announcements now. So announcements means that you can display a message to the player for different types of things. So I'll put an announcement, for instance, on the Wizards of Westwood. They've been cultivating a good experience. I'll select the GM and player 2 so they both get it, and we'll say that when the value is greater than or equal to 20. Oh, we need a message. Silly me. And we'll say, congratulations. You have now become liked as a keyword for the state that they've reached for friendliness by the Wizards. And then we'll put in that announcement. Oh, and I set it for less than or equal to. Oh my goodness, I'm just messing up everything right now. Okay, I have now set up this announcement. We're going to set up one really quick for arrows as well, so that when it becomes 5 or less, your arrows are low. And then we'll do the same for bombs. When it becomes 1, you are on your last bomb. And then we'll set one up as well for poison. 1, this is the last, and will run out when gone. And now we've got in some announcements just to showcase it. Let's take you over to the player view so you can see that. Sorry about that. I'm probably going to end up editing that, but that's just how it is. So now on the player view, you can actually see that we have this new tab for ammunition. We can see the 3 items that have been put in, and you can also see the faction here, which the player can't control. So actually, we'll show that really quickly. I will put the player up to a faction level of 20 just so we can see that message display. So they've had something good happen, which has moved up basically their reputation with that faction, and we now get this pop-up that says Wizards of Wildwood greater than or Westwood greater than or equal to 20. Congratulations, you've become liked by the Wizards. The player can dismiss that, and if the value was to go lower and then was to come back above that value, it update with that same message again. I can actually show that to you here. So the player ends up using arrows until they end up hitting this magical number of 5. They say, oh, my arrows are low. Okay, I'm gonna have to be careful. They dismiss it. And then the next morning they raise the value back up to 20 as they make them again. And then if they were to go back down, it would rewarn that player as long as you don't delete that message, that announcement from the GM side. And they can dismiss it again, and the item can go down to 0 because it persists at 0, and they can, again, bring it back up. And that was kind of one of the big functionalities that I had to add into it, was the ability for that to all work as properly needed for the table. You have the same thing for bombs. Again, you're on your last bomb. They can dismiss it, and then it'll persist because they can make more the next day. But then poison, because we took off the persist on 0, when it gets down to the last one, it'll warn them. You'll run out, and then when they run out, it will disappear because that was a finite resource, something that they don't have access to. And that was one of the really cool things that you can now implement with your tables. I'm going to jump back over to the GM view, and we're going to show you a little bit more of what can be done with this cool module. So we've gone through those things. Now I want to create a couple NPCs. So I'll make a new bag for that. And then we'll create Talenda. This is the ones I had made up on the spot when I was first doing it. The vampire and Kalenda the archer. I know, very original. And we're going to put in some images for them. Again, this was one of the reasons that I really wanted to make something like this. This vampire image that I chose just doesn't show up at all. But if you give it a nice background and then, oh, excuse me, and then resize it to display the way that you want, you now have the ability to represent those things much more clearly, which is cool. Let me put in my archer as well and size them up so they look proper. And then we'll put on a cool background because we love the backgrounds. And then these are not, these will persist at 0. They're known by the player. They are not player controlled at all. And I'm going to give some values. They are in bad relationship with Talenda the Vampire, because soon you'll find out that Talenda is in good relationship with the witches. So we'll say that they have a -12. And then Kalenda the Archer, they actually have a relatively good reputation with, we'll say it's 32. Now, the cool thing that I've added in to implement for this, as I'm going to open this a little bit wider, is I now can make a new custom entry. So you have player 2, you have player 3, you have player 4, but let's say we wanted to represent one of these NPCs to relate them to the factions that we've got on this page. We can do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to NPCs and we're going to come here and we're going to add a new custom entry. And for that new custom entry, or actually I'll go to factions and I'll do it because that'll probably be an easier way to do it. And we'll do a new custom entry and we'll go Talenda the Vampire. And we now have a new custom character, basically, that Talenda the Vampire. And just so you know, these are sized based on the text themselves. I might shrink it up a little bit more because that can be done. But for now, it works. I think the UI I tried to make as clean as I possibly could. So we've got this new Talenda the Vampire. Now, Talenda is an awful, awful reputation with just about everybody. She's not off with, except for the Witches of Westwood. She actually has a very good reputation with them. But she does not really get along with most factions. Actually, we'll say that she's good with the Constructium. They know what it is to be considered an outsider, treated poorly, and she has no interest in them because they have no blood. And we'll say she's on bad relations with the bookworms as well. So we'll say she's like -42. And now we've got Talenda the Vampire represented here. That means that these are all the faction things, but if we want to show these to the players, we can actually share that information now. And I can show you over on the player side of things, as I bring everything over here, that we now have NPCs updated in here. You can see their relationship. But you also can see this little slightly grayed out, I guess you could put it, or what looks like it's not a full tab. And if you click on that, it actually shows you Talenda the Vampire's relationship with any of the pages that you've shared, or any of the pages that you've made for that character. So now we know that Talenda the Vampire has these relationship with the factions that this player also has relationships with the factions of. This was made by request on an issue that had been put up on my GitHub repository, and it was just such a cool idea to create this matrix to represent both the factions in game as well as the NPCs that might be created, or any of a dozen different ways that players out there might think of to utilize this. That I really loved it, and I absolutely slammed my head against a wall for quite some time making it done. But it's probably one of the coolest little implementations that is possible with a bag of lists. I'll take you back over to the GM side, but I think I've shown off most of what this module was made for, intended for, and is capable of. You now have the ability to do announcements. You can set the image to appear exactly as you want it, and the player can have that control as well. You can change the backgrounds and colors so that things can be represented and shown more cleanly, which I really do love that. I might be adding in some more gradients later, but I wanted to at least get this basic premise set done. I was even looking at possibly doing custom backgrounds, but I was trying to get the main core things I wanted implemented. It's a really cool module. I plan on trying to maintain it. I would like this to be used. I'd like this to be something that's so beloved it's used at every single table. It is said in the same breath as things like, Dice So Nice or any of a dozen other modules. I do want to send out appreciation to the guys or the people, I should say, that them, those that made socketlib. My entire thing runs on socketlib for a lot of the syncing between the GM and player interactions, and because of them, that really this module is available and possible. And I know dozens of other modules that are in the same boat. So a lot of love and appreciation out to the folks over there that made that. And that's all I have for you. I hope that you find use for this in your game, and that it can basically, allow you to demonstrate and show and track and do things in ways that I hadn't even thought of. Again, if you find that this is useful and you want to make a donation, it's appreciated. But I wanted to give back to the community who's given me so much. Like honestly, the amount of modules, 100 plus that I've been running on my own, I can't imagine trying to set this up behind a paywall. So all the love out there in the gaming world, and I hope that your game goes as well as mine. Thanks again.